I'm just going to say it. Hero RB is the best draft strategy to use in your fantasy football drafts for 2024. So you're going to ask me, Caleb, well, what is Hero RB? So if you haven't done a Hero RB draft, it's where you literally draft one running back in the first 5 to 6 rounds of your fantasy football league, where you're able to get that elite level guy and kind of then focus and address your wide receivers, your tight end, and your quarterback. What we want to do, of course, is get that elite level quarterback, get that elite level tight end, and really fill out that wide receiver position. We want enough options to have in the flex where the weakest position that's going to be on your team is going to be your RB2 spot. Now, you're going to say, okay, cool. So I understand Hero RB. So why are we doing Hero RB? Especially if you're an oldie, you probably love to do robust RB. You're potentially doing a double Hero RB build where your first 2 to 3 picks are for sure running backs. So the reason that people like addressing the quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end position and not getting a second elite level running back, it really comes down to the fact that running backs get injured more than wide receivers. Now, I know a lot of people use that just kind of as a phrase. They say it out there without really having the real data behind that. If we take a look at this data, we're going to literally see that since 2015, it's been around 3 games missed from the top 20 RBs taken in ADP before the season. Now, we're seeing how the serious injury chance really goes to about 19%. So you're really shooting in the dark that out of the top 20 RBs, you might have a running back that doesn't get seriously injured. Now, when we're talking about playing football, we all know that it's a violent sport. So we know that injuries happen. You're always, when you're playing fantasy football, the probable, the questionable, reading kind of the injury report before the game, that is a part that you have to do. But when we take a look at the average games missed of the top 20 wide receivers in ADP since 2015, we're going to see that the average wide receiver misses 1.84 games and has a 12.5% chance of serious injury. So wide receivers, as much as they might lack in overall production of, like, if you get an elite level league winning type running back compared to drafting a wide receiver in the first few rounds, it might not have as much of an impact directly on WARP, wins above replacement, and just being able to actually win your league. You're going to really see that the overall upside of getting them feels to be a little bit safer. And in some cases, you have similar level upside on the output and less downside based on those injury metrics from 2015. So now the question you're probably going to be asking yourself is like, okay, Caleb, so you're telling me that we have to draft wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks. We're taking one running back in the first, 5 rounds, and then we're going to address it kind of later on. How are you going to supplement that RB2 to RB4 production that I might need, especially at the fact that my first Hero RB might potentially get injured during the season? So when we take a look at last year, for instance, there was really a bunch of late round running backs that absolutely crushed in fantasy. Whether we're talking about Devon, whether we're talking about Kyron Williams, there was a bunch of guys that you were able to find on the waiver wire or draft super late that were able to come in, even a guy like a DeAndre Swift, and absolutely kill it for you in your RB2 spots. In some instances, they turned into your RB1. We could even talk about a guy that you'd get to draft last year in the RB dead zone, like a Ramondre Stevenson, where maybe he didn't have the same level of output and upside, but it was still a very solid RB2. So there's guys each and every year that you're able to get and find to plug into your running back spots, even if you missed out on drafting an elite level guy. So that's kind of the strategy with Hero RB. Like we said, we want to get one of these elite level running backs, first 5 rounds, absolutely hammer the wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight end. So you're going to say to me, especially like when we're talking about some of the myths about Hero RB, the first one's especially for some of you guys, old guys that absolutely love drafting your running backs. And like I said, I've been playing since 2008. So I remember the days where we went first 3 running backs out of the first 3 rounds. It's crazy to think that people are going Hero RB and kind of just pushing the position of the running backs a little bit later. There is a higher chance if you get 2 league winning running backs that it's absolutely going to help you win your fantasy football league. Like we talked about the WARP, getting some of these high productions. Like if you get a guy like CMC on your team, you're going to have a lot better of a chance of winning your league than if you get an elite level guy like a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, or even a guy like CeeDee Lamb to pop off. But the thing is, like we just said with the injury metrics, it's going to be safer for you to draft those guys, even though they have maybe less overall WARP league winning upside. They do perform a little bit better week over week, and you don't have as much of an injury risk. So it's a little bit higher of a projection for you and a higher chance of you actually winning your league if you kind of take some of these good bets. If we're looking at guys over the last few years on some of the biggest sites like Underdog or even FFPC, this Hero RB build has won people millions. So it's not just something that is now translating over to your kind of standard home redraft leagues. Yes, we all know running backs go super early in those level formats, but this is something that is kind of busting onto the scene and something that if you are thinking and you have a draft coming up this weekend, I just had my first redraft draft yesterday and I did a Hero RB build. A lot of these principles can be applied to it. Now, like I said, I personally think that Hero RB is king. I think right now, the ability for you, and especially in the certain formats, you got to know your scoring format. So especially if you're playing in a half PPR or PPR league, Hero RB is the way that I would recommend going. But of course, if you're playing in some weird standard league with 0.25 points per carry or something like that with no PPR, of course, you're going to absolutely go robust RB. That kind of scoring format is kind of turning into the little bit of a stone age where a lot more leagues are moving to that half PPR formats, and especially with few flex. So if you only have one flex, running backs are more valuable. If you have two flex, running backs become a little less valuable in those certain circumstances. So like I said, it really just depends too on the ADP ranges that you have to look at. Like if we're saying, like if you look at the composite ADP, like I use 4for4 to kind of see across the board. So not only you're looking at a site like Underdog, you do take into account Yahoo, CBS. So it is a good site to kind of ESPN. You get to see the composite ADPs so that you also know how you're going to be able to draft when you get to those leagues. So this is a team that I just drafted, and we will be doing a little bit of a mock draft here, but I just want to present this before we get to this draft, talking a little bit through this team that I just drafted over on Yahoo. First pick, I went with Jamar Chase. I had the pick overall 9. Jahmyr Gibbs somehow fell to the second, so Jahmyr Gibbs kind of became my Hero RB. I then addressed every other position. I drafted literally Jalen Hurts in the 3rd and then Mark Andrews in the 4th, just because I wanted to get a little bit of a positional advantage at both quarterback and tight end, because I knew I could get some pretty good receivers in the back end. I then was able to draft Joe Mixon in the next round, which I absolutely love getting Joe Mixon to kind of round out the starting lineup. Then we get Terry McLaurin as my first flex, Calvin Ridley, Jonathan Brooks, Zach Moss, Justin Herbert, Ben Sinnott. This is a league where I can't draft. It's some weird settings where you're only allowed to draft 4 running backs and 4 wide receivers. So I will be dropping Justin Herbert and Ben Sinnott and picking up some more running backs post-draft when that happens on Tuesday on the waiver wire. So like I said, everyone does have some weird settings in their league. But the thing that I love about this is Jahmyr Gibbs is my Hero RB build. And I think I did a really great job of being able to address some back-end RB2s, having a guy like a Joe Mixon, having a guy like a Jonathan Brooks, having a guy like a Zach Moss. That gives me plenty of options in my running back room while having a very strong receiving core, Malik Neighbors, Jahmyr Gibbs, Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley to really work with. And especially with when I drop 2 more players, I pick up another running back and wide receiver, it's going to make it feel even so much better. So we are going to do this draft from the 7th overall pick, and we're going to be doing a Hero RB build. So we will be drafting the number 1 running back probably within the first 2 rounds is kind of my goal here. I want to see what falls to us. So here we are sitting at this point, and we had Bijan Robinson go at the 1-2. Like we said, you're playing in a home league. Some guys absolutely love their running backs. Like I drafted in my draft yesterday, I'm going to go with Jamar Chase at the 1-7, get an elite level wide receiver. Oh my goodness, Breece Hall falling to the 111 is actually kind of crazy. I feel like sleepers at ADP, it's in line, but sometimes they do crazy stuff, cause things to happen. And so we fall right here. And a guy like Kyren Williams falls directly into our lap. And I absolutely love this start with Jamar Chase and Kyren Williams. Kyren as our anchor RB, our elite league winning upside type RB that we're having in the Hero RB build. And so now I have wide receiver, I have my running back, and we can kind of start to address the rest of our team from here. Now we do see Travis Kelce go off the 2-7. I have him and Sam Laporta super close. Now Patrick Mahomes is an interesting pick right here to get an elite level quarterback, but I do prioritize that elite level tight end because I do think there's enough QBs later in the draft, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, that are falling to ranges that I do feel are pretty valuable, and I can kind of address that position a little bit later on. But then we see a little bit of a quarterback run between Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and CJ Stroud come off the board. So we are back on the clock right here after taking Sam Laporta. And honestly, I probably could have gone with Patrick Mahomes and then drafted Mark Andrews and felt very similar. We do have a bunch of good running back values currently on the board, but when we're taking a look, we need to kind of start to address this wide receiver position because we only do have one. A guy like DK Metcalf is interesting, but in my ranks, I have Malik Neighbors higher. So I'll go with Malik Neighbors, ultimate level upside in my wide receiver 2 spot. I mean, if you guys are seeing the stuff that is happening on camp, I think the fact that Martin Harrison Jr. is going at the 2-3 and Malik Neighbors is going in the 4th round really is just a difference in quarterback. Both are going to be absolute studs. We're back up on the clock, and a guy like Anthony Richardson with the high level upside's intriguing, but honestly, I'm probably going to take this next pick and then draft Kyler in the 6th. So I'm going to go with Tank Dell, who ends up in my slot. And if you guys don't know, my big head is in the way, but it is just a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex type format. So running back is still very valuable. So like we said, in maybe with a 2 flex, it makes wide receiver a lot more dominant. But in this format, even Hero RB in this level of a format still can really work for you and your overall roster. So we got 2 guys. And like I said, by the time we get back in the 6th, Kyler Murray is pick 78. So do we risk it for the biscuit risk it and continue to push off our place, I think potentially I'm going to grab my RB2 here. And I know we went absolute hero RB, and maybe taking in the 6th, you usually wait sometimes until the 7th, but I'm going to kind of play it risky because I do think the value on a guy like David Montgomery as our RB2 feels really good next to Kyren Williams. So we're going to cross our fingers and pray that Kyler Murray somehow makes it back to us. See Dak Prescott off the board. Kyler Murray goes at the 7-2. So ladies and gentlemen, probably should have just taken my guy in Kyler Murray. Now we kind of had a little bit of a QB run. And so we're kind of out on a lot of these QBs at cost. A guy like Caleb Williams is interesting to me, but based on this, we're kind of going to be taking best player available, and that's going to be Xavier Worthy to me. So we got Tony Pollard off the board afterwards. And listen, Xavier Worthy's on the bench. I probably, like we said, if we could go back, maybe I take Patrick Mahomes and then take Mark Andrews and that Malik Neighbors, Sam Laporta spot. But you don't always know. We always kind of have to play these ADP games. And so we're back up on the clock here. And there's a lot of good players that we could potentially take. Quarterback is still a question. Like, do I reach here on a guy like Caleb Williams? I'm just going to continue to kind of hold out and address my other positions, get an absolute solid bench. So the next guy, like I said, we need some shots at RB that are elite. We feel good about Tank Dell. We also got Xavier Worthy, so we can probably hold off on drafting another wide receiver. So it's really for you. Right here, it's between Javonte Williams and Jonathan Brooks. And it's kind of funny because we did hero RB. I still do like a lot of these later round running back values. I'm actually going to go with Jonathan Brooks over Javonte Williams because I think the upside, I think Javonte Williams is safer, but I think the upside of a guy like Jonathan Brooks is higher. And since we already have a guy like David Montgomery that I feel comfortable with, it does feel good. Now, I was hoping Caleb Williams was going to actually fall back to us in that spot, but he actually didn't. So that's fine. I'll go with a guy like Tua. And since I kind of waited on quarterback, I don't like taking two quarterbacks. I like to take one elite level quarterback and kind of just play the waiver wire, but I definitely think Tua's not going to be enough. I'm not the biggest Tua guy. So I'm actually going to double tap on Jaden Daniels, and you're going to call me crazy. You're going to call me an idiot. I think Jaden Daniels actually has the potential to be the starter on this lineup. I just wanted to shore up my quarterback room because as much as now I'm looking, and I think we have the wide receivers, we have an elite level tight end. We're drafting two quarterbacks just to cement that. Now we can kind of do whatever we want to do. I know they're going to start suggesting we got 3 more picks plus defense and kicker. I'll leave the defense and kicker till the end. We just need to kind of shore up the running back room a little bit and shore up some of these extra pass catchers in the backfield. So we're taking ultimate level shots, ultimate level upside. A guy like Zach Charbonnet, as much as we didn't like what we saw in the 1 week that he came in for Kenneth Walker last year, you do have to consider with Zach Charbonnet, he was drafted in the 2nd round. We have a new head coaching staff for the Seattle Seahawks. Ryan Grubb could do a lot of amazing things for both Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So I do think the overall value is there. Now, we're back up on the clock here. And like we said, we probably need to start thinking about another wide receiver. A guy like a Josh Palmer, as much as I like a guy like a Ladd, Josh Palmer's kind of the wide receiver too. So we'll go with Josh Palmer with Justin Herbert, an elite level quarterback. Josh Palmer has shown flashes of fantasy football production. It's just been very, very, very inconsistent. So we got 3 more picks. So we can kind of take best player available, and then we'll have to address the defense and kicker. And like I said, if you don't in your drafts, if you get one of the elite level quarterbacks, if you get a Josh Allen, if you get a Patrick Mahomes, I swear, do not take a second quarterback. The only reason in this draft I took a second quarterback was because I was not confident in Tua Tagovailoa as my elite level starter. So I kind of got that insurance policy with Jaden Daniels, which I'll just probably play the matchups, play whoever is hot on a week to week. Here, I'll take a shot on a guy like Jalen Polk as another high level wide receiver. But when we come back up on the clock at the end of this draft, I will have to then address the kicker and the defense position. Now, I'm pretty cool with a lot of these kickers. I know the kickers are starting to go off the board, but I think the Dallas Cowboys defense has a little bit more of longevity in the fact that I think they can get me some points. Whereas kicker, I'm pretty cool with playing a lot of these guys. Like if Jason Sanders falls to me here, he goes off the board. I do like Jason Sanders. A guy like Daniel Carlson's interesting. I mean, a lot of these kickers went super, like Justin Tucker went at the 11-6. I recommend that. I'll just take Jason Myers because he's the best recommended player available. So if we end up taking a look at this overall draft, you're going to see to me, I get Jamar Chase as my 1, Kyren Williams as my RB1. We get Sam Laporta as tight end 1, Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell to kind of round out that starting lineup, at least in regards to the running backs, tight end, and wide receiver. David Montgomery, we feel good about the touchdown upside, kind of our worst starter up to that point. If you debate maybe potentially the quarterbacks, I probably should have went with Kyler Murray there, but I ended up punting Kyler Murray, and of course he went off the board before I was able to pick. But I got Xavier Worthy kind of as a backup. He will be high upside level play that in case something like a Malik Neighbors isn't the guy, confident that Xavier Worthy or Malik Neighbors are going to put up high end wide receiver 2 numbers for me on a week to week basis that I won't feel the hit on that. High upside shot on Jonathan Brooks as my RB3. Like we said, we went with a little bit of a hero RB build, so being able to get an elite level RB3 when we comes back in Dave Canales as a rookie, high level upside. A lot of question marks, but a lot of good things that we have seen from running backs in Dave Canales-led offense. Tua, Jaden Daniels, Zach Charbonnet, Josh Palmer, Jalen Polk, Cowboys defense, and of course, Myers, kicker for the Seattle Seahawks. So let me know what you think of this draft down below. Let me know if I did a good job, if you like this team, if you like the Hero RB build. I think Hero RB makes it so that you have a high upside team, but also a safe enough floor that you are going to be able to compete week in and week out. And you're really going to kind of save yourself from a lot of the extra wear and tear injuries that could potentially derail your team if you have too many elite level running backs at the top and potentially on the bust rate, because we have seen in previous years, like last year with Austin Eckler, a first round running back isn't always promised the ability to perform to the level that we want to see, because we were also drafting Bijan Robinson last year, even though I'm a high Bijan Robinson believer. So if you like the Hero RB draft strategy, if you want me to help you win your fantasy football league in 2024 fantasy football, hit that like and subscribe button. On the way to 3,000 subscribers, I'm going to be doing live streams, answering all your questions in the comments. So I want you here in the community that we are building on the Caleb Nemi Fantasy Football channel. I'll catch you on the next one. Here are 2 more videos to check out. Peace.